probably was in my wildest dreams. So now I think it's a vision of, push yourself to see, how much you can inspire people and do different things that I think that people had always said that people with cystic fibrosis or transplant probably couldn't do. I'm Murray Brown. I'm how old am I? 29. I am a father of 4, married. I'm very fortunate that I live a pretty great life. And I go for the Ds, so finally we won the premiership, which I was pretty excited about. It's a long-suffering, or not long, it's only 29 years, but I'm a pretty passionate D supporter, so I was pretty excited for us to win the footy. But apart from that, I love tennis, I love most sports, and I probably love just being, a dad and, just getting to enjoy life. So I was diagnosed when I was born. My older brother has cystic fibrosis. He's 39 and doing really well. Myself, diagnosed when I was born, and I was doing okay at the start of, I guess, my CF side of it. So I probably from 0 to let's say 7 or 8. I was still on medications and probably had 1 or 2 tune-ups. Going into hospital a few times, but nothing too drastic. And then I got sicker and sicker over a period of probably 6 years. And then by the time I was 13, 14, my lung function probably dropped to about 50%. And then I got sicker and sicker over that time. And then by the time I was probably 17, I was going in hospital probably like 8 times a year, 9 times a year, and then we're monitoring, I guess, what to do. I had a double lung transplant. I had my transplant at 19. So yeah, I've had a somewhat of a journey around very much in my teens around being sick and not being able to, I guess, do the day-and-day things. By the time I was pretty sick with my transplant, it would take about 3 hours to go for a shower. I was on oxygen 24/7. It was like breathing out of a straw is probably the best way to describe it. So, but that's okay. I was fortunate enough to I guess, be eligible to have a transplant, to probably have great doctors and people around me that could support me. I think mentally and physically, but mainly mentally. I think that if you have people that can be there to support, it makes it a bit easier. And I was able to get through the other side, and then now I'm pretty much, I've got cystic fibrosis, but I live day to day probably more around from a transplant perspective and a rejection and monitoring, I guess, the perils of transplant. But if the positive view would be probably this, being able to travel the world, have a house, have a job that I know that I'm passionate about, and then obviously have a family, if I'm fortunate enough to have a family, and be able to experience all the joys and challenges that you face. So I think when growing up with CF, I was always under the impression that CFs couldn't have kids, or especially weren't able to have kids for it was just the understanding, and I think it was almost like an unspoken thing. Obviously, no one really likes to talk about that side of it, especially when you're young. And my brother, he also, I think, was under that exact same understanding, even being older. But I think over time, you start to hear other people have had kids, or you start to see, it's possible. But for me, I always thought, wouldn't it be great to have kids? But I've got CF, so it may not happen. And then, I guess opening yourself up to that dream or to that thought, it would have been, I would say I couldn't tell you when, but I guess at a youngish age of it would be pretty cool to be a parent. And I think I've got the, some characteristics to be able to do that. And then with now wife or partner, I knew that she obviously wanted kids. Very, very early on, we discussed it. We'd gone through the genetic testing pretty much really, really early. But that was more, we had there was an opportunity to do it, and we figured, why not? If we're together, then perfect. And if something happens, then at least, we've both done the genetic testing. We both have an understanding of it. And I knew that, I knew that she wanted kids, which probably, drives you more because, when it's the person you love and you know that they, that's something that they're really passionate about, you sort of want to be able to be part of that. So, again, my thought process is always probably, a positive one, but I think for us, we just discussed around, are we in a position to do this? Like if we had to obviously go down the IVF route. So, are we in a position financially to do this? And then what happens if something happens to me? So a lot of discussions we had, I think initially were on maybe Danielle and I already had, without even thinking about it now, is that we probably had already discussed around we just want to be parents. It would be great to be parents. And then from that next thing was, for me, was a big one is around finance, because I feel like it sometimes can make it challenging in a relationship when money becomes, a conversation around IVF. Okay, if it fails once, twice, 3 times, how's it's the mental strain on not just what's happening, but also financially. And then obviously if I got sick, there's a wage gone, how would this process work? So we discussed that a fair bit before we, I guess, decided to have kids. And then the other part to that is I think we both just love the idea of, becoming parents and being able to, have little Murray and Danielle's running around and, doing their thing. I think anyone wanting to have children has their own story, whether it be a really, a normal pathway, I guess, or whether it be going through IVF, whether it be, for me, there's a few things. One is that I knew that we had to go through IVF, but where do I start? Who do I speak to? But then again, are these people, do they understand a transplant perspective, medications, and then the multiple, I guess, facets of that. And then I think probably the hardest part once we got past, I guess, my complications, because it wasn't just as straightforward as traditionally a normal, I guess, CF when they retrieve the sperm. So once we got past some of those complications, then I think it's probably the challenges and the sacrifices the female has to make, from my perspective, to obviously do the whole IVF journey from the start to the end is pretty taxing when it's probably your the reason why you're going through the IVF process is because of you. It's not specifically because of because of her or the female side. It's because you weren't able to, I guess, you didn't have the sperm to be able to, do the whole process. So then you're the one that sort of has created the IVF process, which is, I wouldn't say that I have guilt on it. It's more just, I just know that it can become challenging because, you're watching someone go through pain or through the emotions and the highs and lows of everything it consists of. Well, we're very lucky that we've got a really good relationship. I think we're pretty open, and we talk a fair bit around, I guess, how we're feeling and those type of things. I think that it's really important that if you can be as open as possible around, how I guess you're feeling and how you and vice versa, then it can create a more of an open forum to, when things get more challenging. I don't know. I would say Danielle was just exceptional through the process, and she soldiered on, never complained or never made me feel like I guess it was my fault or I'm the reason why. It was never that feeling, which I think helps the most, because I think that's what would be the hardest. I guess the normal process for CF would be, and I'm going to get the wording wrong, but would be pretty much they put a syringe in your testicles and then take out the sperm, and then be able to inseminate that into the egg, and that's the process. Let's go with. Whereas, unfortunately for me, I had lazy sperm. Don't know whether that is from a transplant perspective and medications, or whether it's from other things, but that's just where it's at. So I had to have something called a microtesi, which is pretty much where they split your testicle in half under a microscope, and then they retrieve the sperm. So it's a very high-tech, hasn't been around for a long time. So I feel really fortunate, if it was 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to have kids. So I feel really, really fortunate that, that we were in that, position that there was a doctor around that could be able to do that procedure, and then, be able to, because, before that you're talking about, is there donor sperm, there's a whole bunch of things that you start rolling around your head. But in terms of once that process has started, then, you have one, and I think anyone that's probably had kids, you can either go, okay, one's enough for me, or whether you go, you know what, I'd love to have two, and that's, so Danielle and I really wanted 3 kids. And then we just got a bonus one, and we got twins. Yeah, it definitely makes it feel like a big family, which I feel really fortunate that I've got. So I had kids first before my brother, but my brother, I think from me having kids, they had already had the discussion, but probably fast-tracked or made them realise that it is possible to have kids. And it's always an exciting time whenever you see a newborn. You sort of think, oh, how exciting! So yeah, I think for him, he was pretty pumped and thought, okay, let's go through the journey and the process to understand, what we have to do to sort of make that happen. What I wish I'd known is probably that you could have kids. I think it didn't stop your dreams, but I feel very fortunate that I obviously found a partner that we, had all those discussions. But I can imagine that if you were probably in that same age bracket, it would have been very challenging to have those conversations, or to have thought when having a partner, thinking, is this possible? Is it not? And you don't know. So I think more education, I think that's coming, and I think more and more of people hearing it, seeing it. I think life expectancy plays a big role, because no matter what, there's always a fear of it. But I think all those things play a big role. What I wish I learned on the other side is just that, in terms of a parenting position, is probably just to just remember that, I think I already do it in terms of being really, grateful and fortunate that, but I think as it probably taking in more moments to celebrate, all the fortunate things you have. So the advice I'd give, I think everyone's different. Everyone's in a different circumstance. I think, from my own perspective, and this is definitely my own opinion versus, but I think to have really, really open conversations around, do you really want kids? There's going to be an impact, no matter what, there's going to be an impact on your health, because you have to make sacrifices as a parent to be able to look after little ones. You have to do different things. You don't have as much time on your hands. There's multiple things that sort of play it. So knowing that, understanding that, but also being okay with that, and maybe setting up, you never know until you're in it, but setting up support systems or networks, and whether that be, okay, well, I'll make sure that, I don't know, whether that be that, someone comes over and you make sure you can do your exercise at these points, or work, or all those different things that you juggle in life as it is. I always think financially, again, as I said at the start, is that I think financially is really important to sort of try to get yourself as secure as possible at the start, because it can be really challenging if you get sick, if something something happens that you weren't planning on, or IVF, is going to cost you more than you thought. There's more than one cycle. There's multiple things that happen. Then at least that pressure doesn't build as quick. I know that at some point I'm going to get sicker, whether that be via the fact that, if you go statistically, you have a transplant, and at some point you're going to deteriorate and probably either need another double lung transplant, or, your time's up, or you'll need a kidney transplant, or you'll get, there's multiple things that can sort of happen, especially with, I guess, post-transplant. Obviously, CF's slightly different, and there's other, complications to that. But with a transplant perspective, I think the thing I most worry about is, can I be the best support or the best human through the whole process? Like through, the kids being young and, forming into teenagers and adults, and can I be present and not sick, and am I going to be there, and those type of things. But all I can do is sort of look after myself to some degree, making sure that I'm really aware and really conscious of some of the things that I should and shouldn't do, and things that I know that may, whether that be making sure that you're on top of your tablets, and that those crazy days you're making sure that you're doing the things that you sort of deep down that you should be doing, that you may not have done, or whatever it may be, on that mental health route of like, am I mentally the best that I can be, even with the challenges that are going on health wise? Can I be better? Is there things that I could do that I guess make sure that I'm more present in the moment? I think all of us have those challenges of phone distractions and different things, and how can I make sure that I guess I'm my best self for as long as I'm here. My favourite part about being a dad, it's a good question. I think seeing their smile and knowing that I guess you're there at the moment while they're young, you're their number one, or you're their confidant. So it's pretty cool, getting a big hug at the end of the day, or and being able to see them grow and ask questions and see, I guess, what the future holds. So it's pretty cool. And I think as well, a really cool part about being a dad is that you get to sort of somewhat shape the things that happen, whether that be for my oldest one who's 4.5, okay, what are the things that made you happy today? Those type of things are really cool, because that hopefully you can ingrain that, and then it goes forever. So I'm excited by those things that you can create moments, and they can keep building. So what surprised me about parenthood is probably that I guess that you can that when you work as a team, or when you work as when you can really do it. Like, it doesn't matter, you've got one, you've got two, you've got four. You can sort of surprise yourself, and you can sort of you can be that person for them and help support. And I guess it's a challenge, and it's one of those things that no one has a manual of how to do it. What's the best way? But you can always do your best, and hopefully that's enough. I think it's got to believe in yourself, and believe that that it'll work itself out, and that that yes, having cystic fibrosis, or having a transplant, or whatever that may be, yes, there's limitations in some way, but I don't know whether those limitations always mean they apply to you, and that you can, I guess, aspire to to do whatever you want. You just have to maybe make sacrifices in other ways that that you to then enjoy different moments. I think it's it's exciting what cystic fibrosis and how far it's come, that people can then now really strive for a dream, and know they can fulfill it.